At this time, I'll call to order the Land Clearance Redevelopment Authority for the City of St. Louis for its regularly scheduled board meeting held on Tuesday, February 28, 2023 via Zoom. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Anderson, not present. Commissioner Spencer,
Present.
Commissioner Jones,
Present.
and Chair McBride.
Present.
And we have a quorum with 3 present and 1 absent.
Very good. We'll take up the minutes for the meeting held on January 24, 2023. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
And properly moved and seconded. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Spencer,
Aye.
Commissioner Jones,
Aye.
and Chair McBride.
Aye.
Motion passes with all voting yes.
All right, we're moving on to resolution 23 LCRA 10759 regarding 2011 through 2115 locust.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you so much. This resolution is designated redevelopers for the 2011 through 2125 Locust Street and 2106 through 2128 Washington redevelopment area. As you recall, back in last year, this redevelopment plan came in front of you and you guys approved it. You allowed for up to 10 years at 90% for the area. We're coming back in front of you to basically designate AHM Group as redeveloper for the area, but within there, we're subdividing the area into 5 individual LLCs will be designated to each project. AHM will be tied to each LLC. To give a little overview, the overall construction cost for the whole area will be a little over $232 million. There'll be 434 market rate apartments. 29 apartments will be 80% AMI. 33 will be 60% AMI. There'll be 32,000 square feet of retail space, 31,000 square feet of office space, and a parking garage. It'll be done in 5 phases. There will also be a contribution to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund of $250,000. I'd like to commend AHM for listening to our wants for the area to mixed income at 60 and 80% EMI. They've worked with us quite a bit throughout the process, and we're very excited about this. All 5 projects with this area. This has also started the process for construction sales tax. So I have Brian Pratt from AHM to speak on the project. I got Mark Spikerman from for outside counsel to speak on the construction sales tax piece. I got Jake Nero here also to speak on the model that's part of your packet. And we also are including a new portion to the packet from this day forward will be a community scorecard packet piece that Andrew now from our department will be speaking on. So kind of a full house of speakers. I guess we can start with Brian Pratt if you're there.
Hello, Commissioners.
Good afternoon, Brian.
I do have a presentation available if you'd like for me to give you a refresh of the 5 phases of the projects, or I'm happy to answer questions at your discretion.
No, yeah, if you could refresh us on that, that'd be great.
Okay. All right. As Zach indicated, this is roughly between the 21st Street and 22nd Street, Washington to the north, Locust to the south, and the downtown west neighborhood. There is a plan that's been adopted by the city called Design Downtown, and our plan fits within those community guidelines and feedback. In particular, it was this plan was adopted as a supplement to the city's comprehensive plan in December 2nd, 2020. I'll kind of move through that, but the plan called for mixed use development, as you can see in that sort of orange area here, immediately to the north of the Union Station and MLS Stadium, and we're squarely in the middle of the mixed use residential, so very much in keeping with the intended plan of the city and the land uses proposed. And some of the feedback from that plan was, building new housing, eliminating parking lots instead of creating shared parking structures, encouraging affordable and new workforce housing, and broader economic activities in downtown. So we believe we're going to accomplish all that through these multiple phases. And I'll just jump right in. So we've got 5 phases. I'm going to move sort of east to west and then to the north, if you will. And we'll start with project 1. This is currently a vacant lot at the 2011-23 Locust location. Our proposed use is a 22, it's actually 29 stories in total, but 22 stories of mass timber over a 7-story concrete podium, approximately 280 units. There will be first floor retail commercial in the parking structure, and there will be an 8th floor restaurant amenity space as well. Structured parking in this case is 350 spaces, which essentially parks the building and the commercial space itself. We're using mass timber construction on this, which has high sustainability impacts, and these are, let me do this. These are some of the outcomes of our design team's sustainable impact scorecard for this project. In particular, it's equivalent to taking about 1,800 cars off the road for 1 year, and saves energy equivalent to operating a little under 800 homes for a year. So really exciting technology, very highly sustainable and beautiful. Project 2 is the 2101-07 Locust. It looks like 2 separate buildings, but they're really joined as a single building. And our proposed, the history is the Lambert building constructed in 1891, and then the second building in 1902. Our plan here is a comprehensive redevelopment, historic restoration of the building into creative flexible office space, roughly 30,000 square feet of rentable square footage when we are complete with the project. Project 3, like the adjacent 2 buildings, we have 2 distinct buildings here, but they too were joined on the inside, so we consider them a singular building. This is the Lambert Pharmacal Company building, constructed in 1911. The Columbia Incandescent Lamp Company in 2000, constructed in 1902. The plan here is to convert the building into apartment units, 44 units, a combination of studios, 1-bed, 2-bed, and 3 beds. And we're targeting a mix of affordable workforce units here. We'll have amenities comparable to market rate buildings. We are also adding about 15 parking spaces in the basement, with additional parking to be provided on adjacent projects, which I'll get to in a second. The 4th project is on what we refer to as the west lot, but it's 2125 Locust. The 2 is currently vacant. This will be 60 plus units of new construction, combination of 1- and 2-bedroom units. And we will have a corner retail bay of approximately 3,500 square feet fronting Locust. We'll be adding a little bit of parking tucked under off the St. Charles Street rear entrance here as well. And this just gives you another view from different angles of the architecture and how we're incorporating it onto the street. And then the final project here is the entire block of the 2100 block of Washington. This is also new construction. Will be closer to 110 units of multifamily with a parking structure of approximately 400 plus parking spaces. We'll have street level retail along Washington Avenue. In particular, this parking structure will help not only park this building, but the projects 2, 3, and 4 that we just referred to will provide overflow parking for those projects, as well as providing some additional parking, public parking for neighborhood uses and other property owners in the area, which is much needed. And these are just vantage points from other aspects of the project. We will be doing some other aesthetic enhancements to the garage corner here as well. And this gives you a look of the project 2, 3, 4, and 5 together. Again, the tower's sort of over here to the east. This is looking south towards the stadium, and this is looking north towards NGA. I know I covered a lot, so happy to answer questions about any or all phases there.
Yeah, Brian, will the mass timber tower be able to look right into the stadium?
It should have a great view of all parts of the city, east, south, north, and west from that vantage point. You know, there aren't a lot of tall adjacent buildings nearby, so it will have a nice direct view down into the stadium, at least for those folks on the south side. And our 8th floor restaurant commercial space will also be oriented that direction.
And since you brought this to our attention last year, yeah, we've been seeing, I think as you yourself previewed, some of this mass timber technology being used on the East Coast, and it's pretty fascinating. The green results that you get from it, as well as just the cost savings in construction, I believe, overall.
There's definitely some efficiency and timeline. I don't know if it's necessarily cost savings relative to other forms, but it certainly shrinks the time frame. Although in the current construction environment, I think the gap between mass timber and conventional is certainly closing.
Indeed. Does commissioners have any questions for Brian Pratt on what he's presented? Commissioner Spencer, I see your hand raised.
Thank you. Brian, thank you for your vision and for bringing these projects to St. Louis City. Lots of questions. I mean, there's a lot of information you went over, but some of the things that stuck out to me were, one, preserving, some of the historic buildings, but also providing that parking for the residentials that are planned in the historic buildings. When you have the lot that's going to be on the north side, will there be access from the rears? Are going to be, some amenities or garden area to be able to connect those, or are they going to have to walk around the block? How's that planned?
Yeah, actually, the rear of those buildings, the projects 2, 3, and 4 along Locust, it's St. Charles Street that runs between there. It's actually not an alley.
Okay.
It's not a conventional width street, but it is more of a street than an alley and to the rear. So project 2, for example, we're reorienting the primary entrance to the rear of that building and making more of a porte cochere back there. So it's going to be sort of facing north, if you will. And then the project 4 apartment entrance is going to be at the St. Charles and 22nd Street corner also. So, with the exception of project 3, those 2 buildings will sort of orient themselves as primary entrances to the garage.
Okay.
And we will have rear entrance for project 3. It just, given the historic tax credit implications of that, or the primary lobby will be the traditional lobby in the front.
Okay. And then on the tower, how was working with the city on the building codes and the timber construction? Has that been going okay? And everything that I hear is that this is really popular, but you're starting to get some delays. That hasn't changed your mind in the way you want to construct this or your schedule for completion?
No, good question. We actually had some great news. We completed our code appeal process with the city's Board of Appeals earlier this month. They approved allowing us to use the alternative materials subsection of the current code, which allows us to use this material at the height that we're using it at. So that has been approved, and we're working on different ways to source the material. There's plenty of options, including some domestically, but certainly some new competition coming into the market on that.
Yeah, I've read that there's only a couple of places you can get it in Canada, so I'm not an expert, but I'm sure you've done your due diligence.
We've got some people who are pretty smart in this area helping us out, Sean.
So the other question about the affordability, and as Zach mentioned, obviously we want to see some of that in these projects. There was about 12% of the total was going to be affordable at that 60 to 80%. And then there's also a $250,000 donation to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So that is separate on top of the other 12%.
That's correct.
Those are most of my questions on the project itself. Get back into the financial in a few minutes.
Thank you. Kennard, any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Thanks.
Thanks. Brian, and so is AHM Group, are they the sole members of all the underlying LLCs?
Currently, we will have other partners, but we'll be the managing member and controlling interest in those LLCs.
And let's see. I think thanks for the refresher and everything, and everything looks like it's developing the proper and appropriate ways. Yeah, so if you'll stay on the line, we've got some questions on the financials, and then we may have some additional questions for you, Brian.
Okay.
All right, Jake and Andrew, will you walk us through the financial aspects that were performed by the SLDC staff?
Sure. So I think we're going to let Andrew kick us off first to provide an overview of the community benefit scorecard, which kind of informs the level of incentive.
Great.
Yeah, as Jake said, so I guess the process now basically is that it needs to be scored by the community benefit scorecard first to put it in a tier, and then we kind of use the financials to narrow in. So, so obviously this portfolio of projects, it has 5 phases. We actually switch the slide to, who's controlling? Yep. All right. So, and this is the first time we're doing this, so happy to take feedback on how this looks. If it's confusing, if there's too much, definitely receive all that too. So this is the scorecard for all 5 together. We actually, we scored all the individual phases themselves as well. We can talk about that if we need to, but they all score in the appropriate range given the abatement level. So, and also the scoring gets.
Andrew, if you could, there's some people that wouldn't have been on the meeting where we kind of explained how this scorecard looks and that it's not you're not looking to max out every column. So could you kind of give, can you kind of give us an overview of what we're doing here with this community scorecard?
Yep, absolutely.
Maybe it's very brief.
The idea behind the scorecard is that projects should have some sort of a benefit to the community. And so there's a number of different categories which are listed on the left side of the slide here under the priority area. And then those all have different criteria that needs to be met in order to get a max possible points within that category. But projects can't really score well in all of these, or even possibly get any points in some of these categories. And so it shouldn't be looked at as like a test. It's really just a kind of a menu of options that can provide benefit to the community by doing these developments. And so we are going to just list all the categories on each left side of the slide, but we'll just show you the ones where the project in front of you actually earns points.
Great, thank you.
And then, so going from there, and we'll just jump into this project then. So I was just explaining that this includes all of the phases together. So the top right is the tiers. So you'll see a total score of 68. And then that score then puts it
Top left?
Top right, actually. So the left side is all possible categories. It also shows what this project earns. So that's the far right column in the table on the left. And then the table on the top right, where you see the big red 68, that's what this project actually scores.
And then to the right of that, you're seeing the tiers that our community benefits scorecard lists out. And so the 68, which is greater than 50, that falls in the tier 3, which means that this project is eligible for up to 25 years of abatement, with the first 10 years being 90% and the final 15 years being 50%. Doesn't mean that that's what we will give projects, and in this case we aren't, but that's where this one falls. So I'll just
Gotcha.
and the way I'm going to present this is just the categories that provide the most points down to the least. And so the first area in which this project scores points is where it's located, essentially. And so our economic justice action plan designated, it created an economic justice index for the entire city and mapped out areas of need and opportunity throughout the city, and ranked those into 5 categories. And so EGI 1, which would be basically the most need, most opportunity from that plan, gets the most points, 30 points in this category. This project in particular is an EGI 3 area, and so it gets 10 points for that location. On to jobs. So obviously this is a large project. It creates a lot of jobs, 208 jobs to be precise. 137 of those are full-time, 51 are part-time. And so the way we're converting that to FTE is just saying part-time or half FTE. So that gives us a total of 162.5 FTE, which gives the project 9 points for that category. Going on to another location-based category. All of the sites in this plan are located within a half mile of a future north-south Metrolink alignment station on Jefferson and Washington. And so essentially this category is we want good transit access, and we also want to encourage development along our proposed north-south Metrolink route, which makes the future alignment more feasible and contributes to the success of that. Next, we obviously want a lot of investment in our city. So a large capital of investment of 187 million gives you the max possible points in the capital investment category, 7 points. The next is another job related category. So not only do we want to create a lot of jobs, we want them to be quality jobs, either paying a livable wage with benefits, or a wage that would allow the employee to also to make enough and seek benefits outside of the job itself. And so all the full-time jobs in this case and part-time jobs do pay a livable wage, but we're only considering the full-time jobs to be quality, in 100. So that's 137 full-time jobs out of 162.5 FTE, which is more than 80% of the jobs being quality as far as we're defining those. So it receives the points, which is 5 in this case. Try to go through these a little quicker. One of the categories is renovating existing vacant buildings to bring life back to vacant structures. It does that. This project does that. So it gets 5 points. Similarly, in some sense, we want to renovate and restore and preserve our historic structures. This does that as well. So it gets 5 points in the historic preservation category. We also want to have projects that implement plans that are adopted by our planning commission. As Brian talked about, this very explicitly aims to target recommendations out of the design downtown STL plan. And so this project is rewarded for that. 5 points. A few more here. Another category is to locate projects on or near commercial corridors to promote dense, walkable development and the ability for people to walk to goods, and also to support our commercial corridors, both socially and economically. And this is located on both the Locust Street and Washington Avenue commercial corridor, and so receives 5 points for that. We have affordable housing. In addition to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund donation, which we'll talk about in a second, this provides affordable units at 80% AMI or below 12.5% of the total units are affordable at that level, and so this gets 5 points. They're going to be using outside funding, and so that category is essentially to try to incentivize people to not only use us as a part of their capital stack and to seek funding elsewhere. In this case, because they're historic structures, they're going to be using state and federal historic tax credits, and that gives them 2 points. And then finally, as I mentioned, they're making a $250,000 contribution to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which gives them an additional 1 point. So in total, 68 points, very high score. They're covering a lot of bases here. It's pretty great. I think it's a very solid project and should provide a lot of community benefits. And yeah, so we can talk about the finances to Jake then.
Well, before we do that, let me see if the commissioners have any questions on the community benefit piece that we just went through. Andrew, any questions for Andrew on that? Commissioner Spencer.
This is a great first run through. I will say it's a little overwhelming with 5 projects for the first time seeing this, so I'm glad we have a summary slide here. A couple of things that stood out to me. One, are we not using the MVA anymore and just using the EG or the Economic Justice Plan areas, and how are those, I guess, how are those compared? And then also looking at the public infrastructure, so the sidewalks and the ADA curb cuts and all of that's basically already taken care of on the site. That wasn't something that the city needed to do or the developer needed to do. And then the last question would be on the contribution for the community benefits contributions. Is that always going to be related just to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund? And is that just related to contributions to that fund, or are there other ways to get additional points, and how is that determined?
So we will be, for projects over $1 million, using the Economic Justice Index as defined in the Economic Justice Action Plan. So it's a similar type of ranking the city. It does use different variables than the market value assessment does, but that is kind of like, it's in alignment with our plan. So that's what we'll be using for these size of projects. For projects under $1 million, we will still use our recommended tax abatement map, which does consider the MVA as part of that. Trying to remember all the questions that from there. I got stuck on that one. Sorry.
So that's all right.
On the contribution, this one's just affordable housing, but in the future we may hopefully have a list of acceptable contributions that be acceptable.
Okay, and that's based on like a percentage, or how's the 1 point determined?
It's percentage for overall projects construction cost. So
okay.
Project cost 200 and something million, and the contribution is 250. I think it's. Am I correct, Andrew? Percentage.
So the way it's actually set up is there's certain buckets that are just dollar amounts, but then also there's an acknowledgement in the top category that if you reach 5% of project costs, you should get the full amount of points as well. Just, basically essentially smaller projects that it just doesn't make sense to, make a $500,000 contribution. They can get, 5% of their project cost by making some sort of donation.
Okay. Going back to the first question, if we could, as the commissioners, grab see a map, and I'm sure it's in the plan, but just to maybe separately so we can identify the areas that we're talking about prior to the meeting. And then the last thing was the public infrastructure improvements. We didn't think that was necessary to add to this project on the developer side, and it's just something that's already
there. Yeah, you're correct. They're probably going to do infrastructure improvements, but since the points that they've already hit the top tier, there was something that
okay.
You can go further in the weeds if we wanted to, but Brian's project's doing well enough by itself without those points. So
okay, that helps a lot, Zach. If we could put maybe, I don't know if you want to put a 0 or not applicable, it's just some
Asterisks.
indication, yeah, that it
Yeah.
wasn't considered because a lot of those other categories may have some points associated with them.
So it's kind of a good question too, because there are a few categories that aren't so cut and dry. And so it does take some, interpretation and maybe, slightly subjective. And so, those would require a little bit more presentation on, I think, in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, Andrew, I would just ask that you and the team, just if there's a situation such as the infrastructure improvements we just discussed, or however that may apply in any other category that they certainly add, but you've not calculated a precise number value for, just like drop an asterisk in there so that we know that that's perhaps in play, so to speak, rather than just not meeting it at all.
Right.
We'll also send out the map to every commissioner after the meeting, so.
Great.
Thank you.
And I think in Brian's presentation, he had the map for each site, how each site related to the others and where it was. But I believe you're asking a little different question, how it fits in this EJR map. Correct, Kishman? Okay.
Yes.
Any questions, Kennard?
No, thanks for that.
Thank you. And for the jobs that have been identified, have we identified a retailer, I guess, that will be employing these individuals, or is that still speculation? Andrew?
I might let somebody else speak about that. I'm not sure about a tenant yet.
Okay. Brian,
I
have we
was
got
gonna
a
ask the same thing about the office, if there was any identified tenants for the office space too.
Yeah, we, it's a bit premature on the retail commercial to have tenants, particularly sort of this neighborhood, scale. We do own other properties in the neighborhood and are beginning to see some interest in our retail space, which is good. And so we hope that as we backfill those spaces and we get a critical mass going here, that, adding first generation retail space will also be a help. On the office, which probably makes up the bulk of the, not all, but the bulk of some of the quality job analysis here. Ultimately, AHM Group ourselves would move into some of that space. We wouldn't be taking the lion's share of that, but we will hopefully make that our future headquarters. And we do have some interest from other users that are sort of in the tech slash STEM areas. So these are, higher paying jobs and building on sort of the foundation of what's, types of companies that are in the 2,500 to 7,500 square foot footprint that are interested in downtown as a location. So.
Thank you.
Well, can we expound on that, Brian? Are these the same jobs that we're using the scorecard that you're discussing now? Or what jobs are fitting into this total jobs created on the community benefit scorecard that equal, is it 208 or 137 full-time jobs?
Yeah, I mean, our firm's growing, so we'll be adding headcount as we move into spaces, and some of the other businesses I'm referring to would be relocating our new businesses to the city as a part of the growth. So, and then we clearly will be marketing the space to other businesses unknown at this time, who hopefully will relocate into locate into the building as well.
Okay. Andrew, I would just caution the LCRA team that as we're going through this jobs created model, that as we're looking at the wage and the number of jobs created, we need to make sure that these are tied to something that's less than theoretical. And so that puts us in at this stage when the building hasn't even been constructed. I appreciate the complication there, but we also need to have some rubric in there where there's an evaluation.
Yep, agreed.
All right. Unless there are any further questions on the community benefit scorecard, and since this is our first time through, there may well be, but I believe we're going to get another opportunity later on this meeting. Let's move on to Jake and the financial impact report.
Good afternoon. So this is obviously a pretty complex project, a large project. We struggled a little bit to wrap our arms around how best to model this, but we did take this to HUD's back late last year, and we kind of approached it two ways. So we did model each phase individually. They all score fairly well under our old model. The returns vary. The properties with more affordable housing had lower returns. Cap rates were not too kind to the office space, but some of the other market rate stuff scored better. In the name brevity, I'm giving you the kind of consolidated, condensed version of the model today. So this is all 5 phases modeled together. The level of abatement did vary across the phases, but this is just a weighted average. So based on the amount of investment in each phase and the amount of abatement that we are awarding, it comes out to an average abatement of 80%. So this scores very well again under our old model.
Jake, is that 80% over square footage measure or some other measure?
It's over the dollar investment amount. So the 100 of the 232 million being invested, 137 million is going into the tower, and that's at 75%. And then so the office space was 14 million at 80%. The kind of mixed income housing was 20 million, and that got a 90% abatement. So we just took the total dollar amount and weighted the levels of abatement that way.
And while we're still on that, yeah, so we had of the 5 different sites, we have 3 at 90%, 1 at 80%, and 1 at 75%, all
Correct.
over 10 years, correct?
Correct. And that 75% is by far the largest investment and project overall.
Very good. Thank you.
Sure.
Please proceed.
And so current taxes over about the 3 acres that we're looking at are just under $100,000, about $98,000 for property taxes annually. During the abatement period, we would expect that number to increase to about $625,000 annually. And then after that abatement burns off, we would estimate annual taxes around $3 million. So obviously this is a significant jump for the city and the schools. 10-year benefit to the city is estimated at just under $5.5 million, increasing to $14 million over 20 years, and $2.7 million to the schools over 10 years, increasing to $16 million over 20 years. $180 million in hard costs. So we would project MBE impacts of $43 million for minority-owned businesses and just under 20 for women-owned businesses. And the incentive has an estimated net present value of $13.7 million. If there are any other questions, I would be happy to answer.
And you have, not you, but as a result of the Baker Tilly consultancy, then this the graph is somewhat different, a small nuance different, correct? And if you could just explain that real quick.
Sure. So there's been a lot of discussion about the Baker Tilly model, and we'll get to one later. I didn't really want to reopen this one because it's been previously modeled and presented late last year. But the new model breaks out the taxes a bit more actually, and it will show us the increment to both the city and the school district on the chart. And it will also kind of more explicitly tell us what the base numbers are for both of those districts, taxing districts. So you can see what the new increment is for this project based to just kind of the status quo if everything were to stay the same.
Okay, so I'm jumping ahead. Commissioner Spencer.
Thank you. When I first looked at this graph, I thought you forgot to add the current tax revenue since it's so low bottom line. So I'm glad that that's in there. I think this graph really does a good job of illustrating the benefit to the city with these incentives. And one of the things that when I listen to the presentation, I look at this graph, you start thinking about how all these phases are really tied together for this, this summary of how the financials are going to work. So maybe a little bit more detail, probably from Mr. Pratt, about the staging of what comes first. Are the historic tax credits applied for and received? We know that there's only a certain amount that are allocated every year, so maybe some understanding of how that happens. And if I guess the first project that might happen would be the northern property with all of the parking, and then you would do the historic projects after that. I just wouldn't want to see these two blocks not get developed because one portion isn't financed or doesn't, isn't in a position to move forward. So that would be helpful to me.
Yeah, maybe I'll start with, the east building tower is, from a parking development standpoint, I'll call as a bit more self-contained than the other 4 phases. With that said, we're in discussions with capital partners to advance the design program around that project. And it's because of the mass timber, it's a little bit different delivery model than your conventional architecture engineering process. The east building, our project 2, we have heard from DED that we scored at the highest score in the tier 2 category. So we're gonna wait and see if we make any if we receive any allocation for that building in this cycle. We have received confirmation from DED pending our part 2 review that we qualified and can expect tax credits for the project 3, which are the west buildings.
Okay.
Currently review process with SHPO NPS on that's anybody's guess, but I'm hearing 6 to 8 months, and we're every bit of 4 plus 5 months into that at the moment. So probably have another 2 to 3 months, let's call it early summer, before we'll know what the amount is for that. But we're in the process of aligning our capital stack for that as well. The north lot, as we refer to, which is project 5, and that has the parking structure in the west, are to some degree probably most tied together, but it can be financed independent of one another. So we would look to move forward with the north project, or project 5, out of the gate as quickly as we can, because of that parking and the need for it to ultimately park the projects 2, 3, and 4. Again, we do have some other property in and around the neighborhood that has excess parking should we need it as an interim solution, but it's definitely not our long-term solution.
Well, it's good to know that you've applied for it. And are your consultants telling you that the allocation that you're looking for are reasonable given the amount that's available? And is SLDC advocating for those credits on your behalf? I'm not sure how that would work, but I'm sure that there's
the advocate. Well, we did have the support of SLDC in the city for our application. Application was a little different this year. Again, we're going on what we're told, without any formal communication yet, but that the west building, we scored high enough, and we fell underneath the allocation cap for it. Okay. And can expect to receive state HTCs for that building in this current application cycle. The office, or project 2, we're still in a wait and see, because they're reviewing the second round applications to see. This isn't a qualified census tract, and there is the additional amount under the program for the QCT, so that helps us for sure. Okay,
so that the project to the north, that's pretty much a go, but you have some flexibility on the other historic tax credit projects to have some delays if they're, if it's this year or if it's next year. I mean, this is going to take several years to get going anyway, I'm sure.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Brian, Jake, or Andrew from the commissioners? Mr. Spikerman, do you have a presentation or comment on this resolution?
I'll just note that at the very beginning, Zach mentioned that there would be sales tax exemption on construction materials. This resolution before you states the intent of the LCRA to facilitate that incentive through an industrial revenue bond transaction. We'd be back at a later date, with the actual final approval of those. In this case would be 5 separate bond transactions.
Right, right. All right, Zach, is there anyone else that we have not heard from on this resolution?
I think we covered everyone in the room and outside the room, so.
Very good. Very good. In the plan that Mr. Pratt and you both discussed, that was the plan that the Planning Commission has generated. Was it downtown?
Downtown now plan, was it
Downtown.
Planning Commission? Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. I know we've taken a lot in, so I'll just give some commissioners a moment if there's any further discussion.
Well, the
Kennard?
only thing I'll say, because I know there are several items on the agenda, so it's not specific to this case, is my general reservation about the sales tax exemptions and how I don't think the statute is applicable in these cases.
Okay. And I appreciate that.
I'm just going to say it on this case. I'm not going to say it on all the rest of the agenda items.
I appreciate that. Anything else?
That's it.
And at this time, I'd entertain a motion to approve resolution 23 LCRA 10-759.
So move, request a previous roll.
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded with previous roll requested. Is there any objection to previous roll? Hearing none, the motion passes and the resolution is approved. All right, Brian, good luck on this.
Thank you.
All right, we're moving on to resolution 23 LCRA 10-760 relating to GSSTL Developer LLC.
Yes, sir. This one's a little bit different than our normal designated developers. This resolution designates STL Developer LLC as redevelopment for the Gateway South redevelopment area. But what makes this difference is different than other redevelopment agreements is we also bringing the Port Authority into the agreement. As you may remember, this redevelopment plan was brought in front of you last year. It has been through the Board of Aldermen. It's been passed. It basically covers, I think, 94 acres just south of downtown, where hopefully we'll bring apartments, office space, industrial uses, and retail space to this area. We scored phase 1 of the 1.2 billion proposed project area. I believe phase 1's $150 million, I believe. No, 200 million, I apologize. In phase 1, we have approved or support 5 years at 90, followed by 5 years at 75, followed by 5 to 50. Now this redevelopment agreement is for the whole area and not just phase 1. But under phase 1, that's the tax abatement amount we've allowed for. We have Shayla Meehan, I'm sorry if I butchered your name, I apologize, from Staff Fast City to speak on this for the developer. We have Mark Spikerman to speak on the redevelopment agreement because it's kind of a more complex redevelopment agreement that we've usually see. I'd like to point out that this was passed at the Port Authority, I believe last month or month before, also as designated redeveloper. We also have Jake to go with the financials for phase 1, and we have Andrew Knott to go over the community scorecard. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Meehan, can you kick us off here?
Sure thing. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. And thank you, commissioners, for your time today. So my name is Shayla Meehan. I'm the real estate project manager with Steadfast City, presenting to you today on behalf of our client, Good Developments Group, the redeveloper. So I believe it was my colleague Doug Rasmussen who presented the Gateway South project to you all last year back at the November meeting for the LCRA redevelopment plan and tax statement. But back here in front of you today for the master redevelopment agreement for the Gateway South project. And, you did a great job explaining some of the details of the project. It's mixed-use development, mixed-use redevelopment, located on the St. Louis riverfront, south of the Arch Grounds. The Gateway South Innovation District, it aims to not only make St. Louis a hub for innovation within the construction and design industry, but also a recreation, residential, and entertainment district. And so the master redevelopment agreement, it covers roughly 94 acres of the total redevelopment. But phase one is a $200 million investment to redevelop approximately 75 of those acres into 130 units of residential, 750,000 square feet of industrial, 127,000 square feet of retail, and 275,000 square feet of office. And like mentioned earlier, the redevelopment agreement sets out that phase one will receive a 15-year property tax abatement, 5 years at 90, 5 years at 75, followed by 5 years at 50%. And then the master redevelopment agreement also sets out that any additional phases can receive up to 15 years of real property tax abatement, but not to exceed 10 years at 90%, followed by 5 years at 50% for any of those additional phases. And those exact abatement amounts are and schedules are subject to SLDC's review and scorecard for those individual phases in addition to phase one. And like mentioned, since the November meeting of last year, it's been approved by the Board of Aldermen of the City of St. Louis, adopted through Board Bill 142 for the plan and the blighting study. And on February 9th of this year, the master redevelopment agreement was the Port Authority. So we're really excited about this project to be here today, sharing this transformative project that will enhance the front door of St. Louis and revitalize its historic character. This area, it has a rich industrial history, and industrial innovation is really the center of this redevelopment. So I'm happy to share my screen of any photos of the site and any renderings, or just go right ahead and answer any questions anyone might have.
Yeah, if you could just give us an overview, an update of where we're at on that, that'd be great.
Sure. Would you like me to share my screen of the renderings? from the
Please.
site? Sure.
I believe you're authorized. Yep,
Okay.
very good.
Is that right there?
Yes, you are.
Okay. So again, the project is, located on the riverfront, just south of the Arch. I believe this is the northwest view. Let's see. And you can see how centrally located this project area really is. Enhancing the walkability of the Arch, downtown St. Louis, Busch Stadium, increasing that connectivity will be a big part of the phase one of this project. So here are some of the project visuals. Crendon Martin is a historic building that is a big part of this phase one of the development. We will work to preserve the Crendon Martin, the historic integrity of the building. But phase one really is centered around the historic Crendon Martin building. Exteriors.
And where are we
Further
just
into-
as far as putting together additional investors, investment, and the nuts and bolts of what's going? I think we have an understanding about where it's going to be located, but
Mhm.
help us understand the rest of those.
Sure, yes. So the developer is in conversations with about I believe 10 to 12 LOIs for potential end users for the area. The project also there was a resolution passed at the February 9th Port Authority meeting for the Port Authority to apply for ARPA industrial site development grant funds for this for the application on behalf of the developer for the project. So that was submitted. That would be, a great catalyst for the phase one of this project to really get phase one started. And further financing and capital stacking for the project has been continued by the developer, which I believe that there might be members from the Good Developments group in the audience. I'm not sure if they can take themselves off mute and maybe answer that question a little bit better than I can, but yes, financing for the project has been coming along and is definitely secured for phase one.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and here again are just some renderings. You can really see that the visual is to emphasize the arch and continue to preserve the historic building of Crendon Martin. Part of phase one, increase walkability, like I had mentioned earlier, and really highlight the riverfront and the downtown area in a way that increases connectivity. And I believe that this is the last slide that I have.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Meehan? All right, hearing none. Let's see, Mr. Spikerman, I think you're gonna kind of walk us through the development designation.
Yes, as Ms. Meehan noted, this is a master redevelopment agreement. It's a tri-party agreement among the LCRA, the Port Authority, and GSSTL Developer LLC, the developer. The LCRA's role is really focused on the tax abatement piece to provide the tax abatement consistent with what Ms. Meehan said. So there's tax abatement for phase one, which is essentially locked in. And then additional phases will come back before this board in the form of parcel development agreements. And as long as it's under the amount authorized by the plan and meets your whatever scoring process you're using at the time, then that's what would be presented to the board. In addition to the tax abatement, the master redevelopment agreement contemplates just the overall development of the project area, including the creation of a nonprofit corporation to help with installation and maintenance of public improvements. The planning department offered some urban design guidelines that they'd like to see, and those were incorporated into the agreement. And then from the port's perspective, there's the port's participation in the form of a port improvement district, which is a overlay district that can impose a 1% sales tax, and an AIM zone, which is a zone you can establish under Missouri law to capture state withholding taxes. The revenues from those two incentives, as well as community improvement district and transportation development district, two other forms of overlay districts, will go to support what's an immense need for improved public infrastructure in the area, and the port will be coordinating most of that. Any other questions? No, that's a lot to take in. It's a complex document.
Well, yeah, and we don't have the document appended to our materials. Just so you're aware, Mr. Spikerman. I also want to point out that I'm overjoyed that we're using the AIM statute, as you may suspect that this will be the first, as I understand it, in the city to use this particular statute. Is that correct?
Well, I would caution you, though, as we see often with the use of the AIM zone, the city or the ports or the LCRA's intent to use it is not always matched by a company's intent to use it, because it does conflict somewhat with the Missouri Works program that benefits individual companies. So as tenants are identified, we'll have to work through those hurdles.
You're good to temper my expectations, Mr. Sparkman. And my happiness is now diminished somewhat, but that's okay.
I apologize for deflating the room.
With regard to, so is this kind of has a few moving targets though, as we've got the synopsis of the agreement, and it discusses in the synopsis what introduction of new market tax credits and how that may affect things. Could you expound on that somewhat?
Yes, as Ms. Meehan mentioned, the developer will ultimately have what I'm sure is a very complex capital stack to build all these things. They're counting on hopefully obtaining an allocation of new market tax credits. To the extent those tax credits are utilized, LCRA abatement actually works very well with that because it doesn't require a transfer of ownership. Permanent transfer of ownership to a tax exempt entity. The LCRA can offer a certificate of abatement, or it can be transferred through an urban redevelopment corporation in just a moment in time. I know that sounds very complex, but for the purposes of the tax credits, maintaining that sort of private ownership makes the tax credit transaction work a whole lot better. I do not, if you're asking about allocation, I don't know that they've obtained any allocation yet. I think that'd be a little premature, but maybe Shayla can comment on that.
Yes, there's, you're correct. There's been no allocation designated to the developer for this project.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Spikerman at this time from the commissioners?
I'm just gonna to the not-for-profit, maybe a little more detail on what the not-for-profit would be doing in the district. I know they've got a SID, so that'll take care of some of the public infrastructure stuff, but are they trying to like activate some of the public spaces with events? Or is this a not-for-profit have another mission?
Yeah, my understanding is it's both installation and maintenance of public space as well as operation and programming. And I will note the executive director of LCRA will get to designate one board member beyond that nonprofit board of directors.
Okay.
As will the executive director of the board.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Jake and Andrew, would you walk us through the other two reports?
Yep, so if we can get the scorecard up on the screen again. Excellent. All right. So, a similar, very large project here. This scores a total of 40 points. There's less categories to go through here, so it'll be a little bit quicker. So the location of the project itself is again in an EGI 3 area, and so it gets 10 points for that. It's estimated to create a lot of jobs. Obviously some of that is a little, that's not going to be an exact amount, I'm sure, but it's in any event, it's well above our highest threshold for receiving the max points in the job creation category. So this will get 9 points for that. Similarly, $200 million investment, if that swings up or down a decent amount, it would still be well within our top bucket for points in the capital investment category. So 7 points. It will be rehabbing 3 vacant and historic structures. So it will receive 5 points for each of those categories. Something to note kind of came up earlier is that it's estimated that 80% of the jobs will be quality jobs, but we didn't include that for the initial scoring because it's so fluid and it's kind of hard to nail that down right now. So just conservatively didn't include points for quality jobs. And actually something I'm realizing now that I did not include as a bullet point on here is kind of what we were just talking about too with the SIDS and the need for significant public infrastructure improvements here. There's probably going to be millions of dollars worth of public infrastructure investment. But again, conservatively, we just kind of put them in the lowest bucket and gave them 2 points for public infrastructure improvements. So it could, realistically, this could score a little bit higher, but just conservatively, it lands at 40 points, which puts it into tier 2, and therefore be eligible for up to 20 years of abatement, 10 years at 90, and followed by 10 years at 50. Happy to answer any questions about this.
Any questions from Andrew on the community benefit scorecard? All right. I don't have any questions at this time. Let's move on to the, well, I do have one question. This is phase 1. If you could just refresh my memory, what are the other phases and how do those, just on a very, very high level, how do they sort out?
Sure. So the entire project would be approximately a $1.2 billion investment including phase 1. I believe following phases would have additional industrial development, furthering the design and construction hub following the completion of phase 1. And those, I believe, those phases would need to commence no later than the year 2030.
Okay. Thank you. Jake, can you walk us through the financial impact report?
Sure.
And before we go, is this under the Baker-Tilly model, under the previous model, just so I can orient myself?
Still the previous model.
Okay.
Baker-Tilly later. This was we modeled this late last year. Similar to the AHM project. So as it's been mentioned several times, $200 million project is a significant investment anywhere in the city, but certainly on our South River front. So all the kind of financial impacts here are very strong, very positive. This did score a 5 out of 5 on our old model. Big job creation component. It is a mixed-use project that is primarily industrial at its core. So there's projected to be over 1,000 jobs created. Fiscal impact to the city of just under $20 million over 10 years, increasing to just under $43 million over 20, and fiscal benefits to the school of $5 million over 10 years, increasing to $21 million over 20. This 12.5 acre phase 1 currently generates about $57,000 in property taxes, so about $4,500 an acre annually. As those levels of abatement wear down, we're projecting annual property taxes for this area ranging from $450,000 up to $2.5 million, and then over $5 million annually after the abatements are complete. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions for Jake on the financial impact report? And this is essentially what we've seen previously, correct, Jake?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. And what this is, less than 20% of the entire proposed project, correct?
Correct. First
Okay.
200 million of 1.2 billion.
Okay. All right. Zach, anyone else speaking on this resolution?
Well, sure.
Thank you. Commissioners, any further questions for any of the presenters?
I think the only question I really have is around the timing and the historic tax credit applications for the phase 1. I know we asked a lot of questions the last time it came around, and there was an indication that the properties were under the control of the developer for the first phase. So I'm wondering, when we can expect this to get going.
I believe I missed part of the beginning of your question, but if it has to do with obtaining control and acreage of the site, the developer does have every intention of completing an offer for the LRA owned property and parcels. one of which is the Crandon Martin West, which, like I had mentioned, is a large part of the phase one redevelopment. So it certainly is their intention to get an offer on the property as soon as possible in order to commence. It's their intention to commence construction, preliminary construction, as early as summer of 2023. So that just demonstrates their, efforts and intentions to submit an offer to the LRA on those parcels to obtain ownership.
And have they applied for the historic tax credits on the state or the federal side? The preservation tax credits?
I actually cannot answer that right now. It is written in the redevelopment plan that the historic tax credits are going to be pursued, but I cannot say guaranteed right now whether or not those have been applied for. I don't believe they have.
Okay, thank you.
And what would preliminary construction entail this beginning this summer, Ms. Meehan?
Sure. Preliminary construction would just, be preparing the land, remediation.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
All right. If there are no further questions, then I would entertain a motion to approve resolution 23 LCRA 10760.
So move, request previous roll.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded with previous roll requested. Is there any objection to previous roll? Hearing none, the motion passes and the resolution is approved. Shayla, good luck to you and Doug. Take care.
Thank you very much. Take care.
All right, moving on to resolution 23 LCRA 10761 relating to 3976 SARPI. Zach, can you walk us through this, please?
Sure. This resolution designating the Rock Hill Spring School LLC as redeveloper for all of the property located in 3974 Sarpy Avenue redevelopment area. I would say back in 2020, the Board of Aldermen passed a redevelopment plan that allowed for, and a blighting study to allow for 10 years of abatement at 90%. That was ordinance 71137. You guys, I don't know who was there at the meeting in 2019, but you guys also passed that redevelopment plan also in 2019. This project with COVID and a couple other setbacks has stalled a little bit, but we're happy to announce that it's moving forward with the designation of developer today. As you recall, Rock Spring School is, you see it from Highway 40 while you drive by at 80 miles per hour, or hopefully less. It has a large truck sign next to it. This is a project to be a completely commercial office space. Average wage, we're hoping around 100,000. We can get into that a little more with Michael Hamburg. 20,000 square feet of office space. And we have Rob Preston also here online with the developer. Mark Spikerman online also, because this has construction sales tax tied to the redevelopment agreement. And also Jake Harrop, who will reveal our new Baker Tilly model on this one. We used the model on this one because some of the numbers needed to be updated since it was an older project. And we've Andrew Knapp also speak on the team scorecard. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Hamburg, Mr. Preston, I'll let one of you give us a little more background, please.
Awesome. Yeah, I can jump in, and good to see you all again, and thank you for your consideration today. Yeah, as Zach mentioned, this is a project that we're very excited to be able to get kind of back and revived from the dead over the last several months. This is one that, was hit by COVID and investor issues, but we were finally able to close on the site at the end of last year. And if you've driven by recently, we've actually already started interior demolition and interior abatement, as well as some exterior phases. I know Zach just mentioned the big Vandevender truck sales sign that we're all used to probably driving by and not noticing it's there anymore, but it actually isn't there anymore. We started to demolish it a few weeks ago, and so that's almost all the way down as well. But really the thought for this building being office space is just the proximity to Cortex, is really to kind of spread some of that over to this side of the highway, and really trying to create what I would call creative office space, but classrooms that are 800 square feet. So it's kind of, if you're running out of space at Cortex, but you're not the size company that's ready for a whole floor of an office space, we've got flexible space. You can get one classroom, and as you grow, upgrade to two, and we'll offer 3 to 5 year leases, so a little bit shorter term, and again a little bit more flexible than what you typically see in the office market. I'd be happy to, let me see if I can share a couple renderings here as well for this project. Are you able to see my screen?
I'm able to see your screen as well as the vintage cars in black and white. Yes.
So this is a rendering. I mean, this is a historic project. We're approved for federal and state historic tax credits, which we'll be utilizing on this project. We've already got all of our approvals in place for that. So really the exterior of the building looks very similar to what it would have looked like, or looks like today. All new tuck pointing, all new windows, but a lot of the masonry remains in good condition. Brand new slate roof will be put on the building, and then a lot of exterior work to be able to accommodate parking. I can show you a couple images of inside one of the classrooms as well. So this is the inside of a classroom here. Basically, a lot of historic wood panels, chalkboards, everything that remains there today historically we'll be preserving. There's these historic tin ceilings that are in pretty good condition that we'll be keeping as well, to again kind of preserve that school vibe, but create this creative office space. That's at a high level kind of where we are. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Let's see here. Mr. Preston, do you have anything to add before we ask questions?
Sir.
Outstanding. Any questions from the commissioners for Mr. Hamburg?
Commissioner Jones, what do you think? You have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. It sounds like I should.
I just wanted to ask you first before I jump in. I just have a couple of things. Number one, I drive by this on Vandevender in addition to Highway 64, and I was really pleased to see that some of the interior demolition work had started.
That is 40 for St. Louis's, by the way.
Yeah, 40. I know. I don't want to show my age.
I say farty, but that's fair.
Even better.
And I know doing the historic rehabs elevate the costs, but maybe you could talk a little bit about why this project really makes financial sense. I know there's some notes in here about the opportunity zone. I think that's important to talk about. Looking at the rate of return, with incentives, it's not very attractive to somebody that might be looking at performance all day. And at $326 a square foot, obviously it's expensive. So maybe you could just go into that a little bit more detail, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit it on the head with the opportunity zone. That was really an advantage and kind of a difference between when we were originally looking at the project to now, was we were able to source an opportunity zone fund to come in and utilize that benefit into the project. The other piece, though, is that because of the opportunity zone, since our original take on this project, we've kind of expanded what we're hoping is our eventual development footprint. So we've got all the land in front of this school that fronts along Vandevender, basically along Sarpy as it turns to Vandevender, under contract right now with the same opportunity zone investor, with plans for about 170 unit apartment project. which we're too early to bring in front of you all today. But a few months from now, we hope to be able to present that project. And so really, although the returns on the school are not as strong maybe on their own, this is really almost from an investor perspective being looked at as just this broader bucket for both of these projects together. So I know it makes the numbers look bad because on their own, on its own, it is a tight deal.
Thank you for that clarity. That really helps. And thank you again for all the investments you've made across St. Louis City.
Thank you.
And could you speak to the full-time jobs that are being, I'm going to jump ahead of what Andrew's going to touch on, but I know that was factored into some of the allocation of points here. So if you could address that for me, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, and I mean, really, I'm pleased to be able to have a project like this because I'm used to, presenting apartments that, unfortunately don't provide a lot of full-time jobs. But, this being all office is really all full-time professional labor. So, when we look at the amount of staffing per thousand, this is about 20,000 square feet, depending on if folks are leasing individual classrooms or entire floors, which comes with pretty large corridor space as well. So I don't know if that answers the question or not.
Somewhat. It just, what are we targeting, and how is that going to be implemented? Because now it's less it's less esoteric, and it's more something that has been baked into the amount of incentive through this new program that's being instituted. So I feel we're held to a higher standard as to the job discussion.
Yeah, and we're, based on what we're seeing and what we've allocated, parking wise, et cetera, I'm anticipating when this thing's full, somewhere between 70 and 80, folks working full time in this building.
Any other questions for Mr. Hamburg or Mr. Preston? Hearing none, I'm going to let Andrew and Jake decide between themselves who's going to go next.
I think it'll be me.
Very good.
So this project gets a total community benefits score of 43, which puts it into the tier 2 category. So as we just talked about the jobs, there's a total of 14 points that get awarded relating to jobs here. So one is the job total of 75. Even if it is the 70 that Mr. Hamburg talked about, that would still give it 9 points. And these are going to be very high paying jobs, averaging around $100,000, an additional 5 points there. Next category, so location, it's in EGI area 4. The others were 3, so the lower you get on that scale, just as an educational point, you get more points. Higher is less. EGI 5 category would get 0 points, and so this is 4, and it gets 5 points for that. It's obviously vacant, and so it gets 5 points for that. It's an old structure built in 1899, 5 points for that. It is located in what's been designated in our old economic development plan, equitable economic development framework, as within an employment district. So it's bringing jobs to an area that we've designated we like to have them. 5 points for that. Just over a $9 million investment, so 3 points instead of a little bit more. And then, as we talked about before, too, historic tax credits to renovate this historic structure, an additional 2 points. Questions if you have them.
Any questions for Andrew? All right, hearing none, we'll yield the floor to Jake.
So I should provide a little bit of an introduction here, I guess. So as we're all probably aware at this point, kind of in parallel to the work that we've been doing with Baker Tilly over the past 18 months or so on our community benefit scorecard, we've also been working with them to put together a revised financial model. So this is the result of that effort. I would say Baker Tilly has been a great partner to work with on the financial side, but I think we all realize that perhaps if the model would come back, that would be helpful. The model needs a little bit of formatting attention. So we are aware of that, and it's something that we're working on. Wrong. We can go back to the previous model. The correct one was up there just a few seconds ago.
the model with the beige, beige bars, I believe.
Correct. So a lot of the outputs of the model are the same as what we were doing previously. We're still looking at the incentive value. We're still looking at the returns to the school district, the city over periods of 10 years and 20 years. Sources and uses are pretty much unchanged. I would say two main changes to the methodology is that we've kind of detached ourselves from the strategic land use analysis that we did previously. So just to refresh everyone's memory, our old model looked at the projected revenues of a project and compared them to the average revenue per square foot of that same strategic land use in a particular neighborhood. So this is somewhat divorced from that kind of geography perspective. Now we're just focusing really in on the dollar amounts and not comparing it to another land use. And if you recall, there's been a number of times where I have to explain why a project that intuitively seems like it would score well was not scoring well, and then it was attached to, well, there was a Family Dollar down the street that was generating revenue. So kind of stepped away from that. In that regard, it's been simplified. Another change is that all of the revenue projections that we're looking at now are nominal values. We used to do a discount to find a net present value of some of that stuff. All of that information will still be available. We will have a packet that goes out with each incentive agreement that provides more numbers than you could ever want to see. But I think just it got confusing to people, and I think it's easier just to kind of look at what are the dollar amounts currently and what are the dollar amounts going to be as a result of this project. So all of that said, this scores well in the model. We have 10-year revenues, new revenues to the city of about $1.2 million, increasing to $2.9 million over 20 years. Revenues to the school district of $136,000 over 10 years, increasing to just over $1 million over 20. You can see that's the impact of that property tax abatement. The revenues for the city remain quite high even during the first 10 years because of all the payroll and earnings taxes associated with the job creation here. We have a nominal value of the incentive of $922,000 with a net present value of 6% discount rate of $689,000. So as Commissioner Spencer kind of alluded to, this does have a low return, a low projected return, but there's not any leverage in the deal. It's just an opportunity zone equity investment. So if you have any questions about the numbers, I'm happy to answer them, or the model methodology, or any suggestions for formatting. Our ears are open. So.
And then is there going to be an overall scoring as we compare project to project, or is that also something that we're not going to be seeing?
Not really. So instead of having a score out of 5, now we have the community benefit scorecard to provide some quantitative basis for level of incentive. So between the community benefit scorecard and looking at a developer's rate of return, we can sort of adjust those incentive levels up or down.
Okay.
We also look at the revenue bringing into the city and the public schools too. So that's the key there also.
Absolutely. And one, hang on a second. And Jake, you asked us, for you, is there anything on this new formatting that needs to be added?
I think we would like to kind of make this more consistent with some of our new materials, SLDC branded materials. So that is kind of, it's a marketing question more than anything. But
okay, understood.
And I do think, there's obviously a lot of cells in this dashboard that aren't populated, kind of taking up a lot of real estate, certainly in the center of the screen here. So I'm sure a lot of that will be kind of moved around. I personally would like to make the line graph a little bit clearer and larger, and a few other things. But this, it's version 1.0 of probably several.
Understood. Commissioner Spencer.
I was just going to mention the formatting on the revenue impacts to the city. The way you're comparing if no project, I think is really, it's formatted a little bit differently, and it's easy to read, and you can really see the difference between if a project happens or if it doesn't. And that's one of the most important things for us to consider.
Agreed. Is this school currently being utilized?
No, it's been vacant for 25 or so years approximately.
That's what I thought. Jake, what's the baseline revenue if no project of 73,000 over 10 years?
That's the city's portion of the current property taxes. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the school district section. So the baseline revenue is
I mean, 20,000, yeah.
right.
That I think that needed to be adjusted based on the tax records I saw earlier today.
Yeah, there's current taxes of a little over $9,000. So over 10 years with an escalator built in, it would probably be around $100,000, which we were estimating the city's portion over 10 years would be about $20,000 of that total.
Okay, that's just carry cost though. You're correct. Okay, gotcha. Mr. Spikerman, I have you down as a speaker on this project.
Yeah, just as Zach noted, this one also has the sales tax exemption. The resolution before you states the intent to facilitate it through the industrial revenue bond transaction, and we'd be back at a later date for final approval of that transaction.
Very good. Thank you. Well, this, I surely, it's unfortunate that we have vacant school buildings, but it's great that we're finding ways to utilize them in both housing and now office space here, Mr. Hamburg. So if there are no further questions, comments from the commissioners, I would entertain a motion to approve resolution 23 LCRA 10761.
So moved. Trust and approve this rule.
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded with a request for previous roll. Is there any objection to that request? Hearing none, the motion passes and the resolution is approved. Thank you, Mr. Hamburg. Thank you, Mr. Preston. All right, moving on to resolution 23 LCRA 10762 relating to 490 North Kings Highway and surrounding environs. Zach.
Thank you, sir. This resolution designates the flats at Forest Park LLC as redevelopment for all the property located in 490 North Kings Highway and 4952 through 4956 McPherson Avenue development area. As you do recall, last year, this project came before you. We supported 10 years abatement, first 5 years at 90%, followed by years 6 through 10 at 75%. Apartments count has changed a little, is at 144 market rate units. 10% of those will be at 80% AMI. So we also including a $150,000 infrastructure contribution to North Kings Highway. That will be arranged to go to DPS to do improvements of North Kings Highway. We got Michael Hamburg here to speak on for the project, also Rob Preston for the developer, as is Jake and Andrew for the scorecards, and Mark Spikerman to discuss the construction sales tax piece also.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Hamburg, Mr. Preston, if you would just give us some more background on that, and also to extent anything's changed from when it was before to what it is now, if you could highlight that change, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, appreciate everyone's consideration today. Basically, the plan has changed slightly from what was previously presented, with not only, supply chain issues and rising costs that we've been facing on all projects. This building has been really unique just because it's in a historic district. So, we don't have plans or really an ability to tear the building down. But in order to build it for its highest and best use, and really build on top of the existing structure, which was our initial plan. Our plan entailed basically structurally enhancing every single column that we're building on top of, as you could guess. And the cost to do so just ended up being astronomical, just especially with where concrete and steel costs are these days. And so we spent really the better part of the last 6 months as we already had almost a final design and acquired the building, trying to figure out, how do we save costs, and is there something else we can do to revise our plan, but still, retain the building and the image of the building within our existing, cultural resources approval, and really within the existing plan we had planned for the building. And really what we came up with was kind of a full interior demo, retain the facade and a little bit of some of the columns that reinforce it, but kind of slide in a new 2-story precast parking structure into the building footprint, which again would be 2 levels of concrete parking that would span this site. Today, there's this existing 490 Kings Highway building. There formerly was this single-family home, 4952 McPherson, which we have demolished as of about a week ago. So the building would span both of those sites. And then on top of the 2-story concrete structure would be 5 stories of wood frame residential construction. Our plan, as Zach alluded to, is up to 144 units with about 150 parking spaces in the garage below. And again, the exterior of the building, as you'll see when I get down here, really retains its existing quality, and we're really kind of building inside of that existing facade. And building this new building on top. So as you drive down Kings Highway and down to McPherson, you really see the same visual at street level here, but up top there'll be again 5 stories above. We also own this corner here at McPherson and Kings Highway, which is currently kind of a beat up parking lot. So we've got plans to activate this intersection by removing, some overgrown trees that are along Kings Highway, but adding some lighting and making this a little bit more pedestrian friendly, just because this intersection is kind of a disaster as it sits currently. Here are some more images of the exterior of the building, really trying to match the brick and kind of historic nature of this building, but Cultural Resources was really big on differentiating the two. So you could tell that this is clearly, historic down below and new construction above. So we really tried to kind of pair them different with each other, but in a way that they worked well together. And then just a few more images here. Here's one at night. And again, there's more that we've planned on this corner than what's pictured here, but you can kind of see how that activates this entrance into the Central West End a little bit better. Pool deck, we'll have all the luxury Class A amenities. And then this is just what the new facade on that site where the house sat previously. This is what that new build construction for the concrete will look like below from that angle. But that is kind of where we are. We bought the site in July of 2022. We've performed all interior demolition and abatement, as well as again demolishing that single family home. And we're kind of ready to move in to the full rebuild and get this thing out of the ground. One more thing just to comment on, and I know I'm rambling here, but although the building is historic in its kind of district, we're not really impacting the existing building enough or really spending enough dollars on the existing building to be able to make sense of getting historic tax credits here. So I just wanted to note that we are not receiving federal or state credits on this one. But with that, I'm happy to answer any questions on the project. And again, kind of similar to the one we just discussed, I know this site has been on folks' radar or on and off folks' radars for a number of years, and we really see it as a pivotal entrance into the Central West End on the north side here. So excited to activate this corner.
Very good. And have you been having continued discussions with the neighborhood on this?
We have, we got approval from the Central West End Historic Neighborhood Group, and then got our preliminary approval from Cultural Resources, and have been in constant communication with them just on any updates to our plan as well. So we've had good feedback there too.
Great. Any questions from the commissioners for Mr. Hamburg? Commissioner Spencer's getting his reading glasses out, so I can't tell.
I took them off and I need to put them back on, but maybe you could go over a little bit more of the amenities in the building and the rent rates and the size of the apartments.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, seeing as we'll be about 144 units, we'll offer all of the Class A amenities you'd see in a, new Central West End building, trying to cater to, ideally that kind of younger, more energetic renter. So, rooftop pool, rooftop amenity lounge that will sit next to the pool with restrooms and a kitchenette area for rentals for parties and that kind of thing. Fitness center, yoga room, dog washing area with a dog park as well. A leasing area with an amenity lounge that can be rented out. Business center, package delivery room, and then the entire building. We have 2 elevators. The garage space that I mentioned is actually, as you can kind of see, or as you could have seen on that image, is fully enclosed. So it'll be a heated, tempered garage and fully secure as well. And then the hallways as well, just seeing as this is a single building, it's all interior corridors. Inside the units, quartz countertops, we're going with kind of trying to match the history of the building a little bit and going with kind of a vintage brass type of fixture package. So it'll look a little bit different, but kind of have that mid-century modern look that I'm sure we all are almost getting sick of seeing nowadays, but it's everywhere. And I don't know, that's the majority of the amenities. Stainless steel appliances, tile backsplashes in the kitchen. I think that rounds it out.
And then you got 10% at 80% of AMI. And then you also, I guess you have a variance, or you're gonna ask for variance on the parking, the 1-to-1 parking.
Yeah, I mean, we are like a touch over 1-to-1, so we have a slight bit of wiggle room there. We would ask for a variance, or we'll, reduce it down to the 144. I mean, I think we'll probably find a few spaces that get eaten up by different, construction components as we get into it.
Okay, yeah, it must be mismarked on my package here. It said you had 118 parking spaces and 100.
Oh, that is the old parking count, correct?
Gotcha.
The resolution reflects the correct count.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Hammer, one thing is I always want to be cognizant of and address is just, this concern about cannibalism from one Class A apartment to another Class A compartment in a similar area. And so I think I don't know, we certainly have these great apartment buildings going in the approximate area. Could you just talk to me about where you think that your tenants are going to be coming from, where your buyers are going to be coming from, and how that interacts in that whole area from a holistic view? Because what we don't want to be doing is incentivizing construction of a structure that's then going to take tenants from another structure we previously incentivized of sometime previously. We're looking to keep building and not just shuffling things around. So if you could speak to that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think I answered Mr. Spencer's question fully on, or someone might have asked on rent levels too, which I think goes hand in hand with that.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, we are not naive to the fact that, we're not sitting at Maryland and Euclid here. We're a few blocks north and west of kind of being in the heart of the Central West End. So we're not targeting the same rent levels that we've seen on some of the brand new projects like the Marlowe or even the Citizen Park, which are great projects and are definitely competitors in some respects. But, we plan on being about $25 or $30 a square foot and more in some cases, depending on the floor plan, lower rents than where they are, just again, because of we're about a block or 2 blocks kind of off the beaten path there. So I don't think, I don't foresee us kind of, stealing residents from some of those brand new incentivized projects. I do think we'll have some of the lower quality projects that might be along Kings Highway that are starting to get close to the rent levels that we're talking about. Might move up to get into some new product like this, which, I see as kind of a natural way for the older product to eventually get recycled and updated, which I think is just kind of natural evolution of how the real estate cycle works. But I also think, my goal with all of these luxury urban products in the city, is to make folks from the county and young folks that are working at WashU, Cortex, Medical, want to stay in the city instead of be in the county. So, I know that's kind of a qualitative statement, I guess, but, that would really be our pitch is getting new bodies and keeping bodies in the city versus going to some of the county projects that might have some of these same amenities.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Hamburg or Mr. Preston? All right, Mr. Speckerman, you want to get yours out of the way now?
Sure. Similar to the other resolutions, this one does involve the sales tax exemption request as well. And this is step one of our two-step process. So we'd be back later with the final approval of the bond documents.
Perfect, thank you. And Andrew and Jake, what do you have for us in this regard?
So let's get the scorecard up if we could. All right, so Flagstaff Forest Park, it's a 36 score on the community benefits scorecard, which is tier 1. So it's eligible for 10 years at 80%, up to 10 years at 80%. Just the total investment in itself gets it 5 points. It is, while it is within Central West End, I think the Economic Justice Index area being 4 or second from the bottom reflects, not being right in the heart of Central West End. 5 points for that. Renovating a vacant and historic site, 5 points for each of those categories. It's a residential project located, a block or two from the Euclid commercial corridor, and so we're hopefully bringing new residents and higher quality residential amenity to that, to support that corridor and provide an additional amenity for the residents. 10% of the units being affordable at 80% AMI rewards the project with 5 points. It's near a bus stop, 3 points for that. And then they've agreed to make a $150,000 contribution for the Kings Highway Street Improvement Fund. 3 additional points for that.
Is that an existing fund or how's that going to be administered?
Zach?
You see the 100, sorry, I was typing, I apologize. The $150,000 contribution you were talking about?
Yes, is that an existing fund? I mean, I'm all for public infrastructure improvements, but just how are we mechanically administering this?
It will be going to BPS in some matter of a way to go to street improvements. So it's
Okay.
That's the way it's going to go.
So it's going to be earmarked, so to speak, and that's fine. I think we just need to get the money to the correct entity to perform those infrastructure improvements. Very good.
I will let the legal department worry about that more so in the process. So, but it will be going to BPS for the improvements. So it's no other parties.
Okay, very good. Any questions for Andrew on the community benefits scorecard? Was this occupied prior to the purchase?
No, this one's been vacant for approximately 10 years. Prior to that, it always had some kind of automotive use. It was originally a Buick dealership, and then it was a Reliance Automotive, basically an auto mechanic repair shop.
Gotcha. Okay. Then let's see, Jake, what do you have for us? The old model, which there's nothing wrong with the old model.
We are stepping way back in time once again to the old model. So we did score this, I believe last summer when this came through originally, and it scored well at that point, 3.25 out of 5. Since there was a kind of minor revision to the real estate program, we rescored it again, but I don't know if it was ever explicitly stated, but the unit count did increase from 118 to 144.
Right.
That actually bumped it up to a 3.5 out of 5. But the fiscal benefit to the city is about 860,000 over 10 years, increasing to 2.4 million over 20. Benefit to the schools of 460,000 over 10 years, increasing to 3.3 over 20. Base property taxes for this parcel, the 2 parcels combined, are a bit under $30,000. Projecting taxes of about 120,000 during the vacant period, increasing to about 650,000 after.
All right, any questions for Jake on the financial model? Looking at something, just give me just one moment here. So is that what typically I don't see the benefit to the school exceeding benefit to the city.
It does when there's kind of no job creation component, because the
Gotcha.
only revenue source here really is property taxes, which the school district is the primary collector.
Gotcha. So it's just property and not the property and job. Okay.
Yeah, when you have payroll and earnings taxes or sales taxes or anything like that, you can see the benefit to the city jump up above the school district. But since this is just straight residential, it's just the property tax.
You're in love with the new model already.
It seems like it. It seems like it. Any questions for Jake on the updated fiscal impact report? All right. Any other speakers on this resolution, Zach?
No, sir.
Very good. Well, this is an exciting project. At this time, I entertain a motion to approve resolution 23 LCRA 10762.
So moved, request a previous roll.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded with request for previous roll. Is there any objection to that request? Hearing none, the motion passes and the resolution is approved. All right, good luck again, Mr. Hamburg and Mr. Preston.
Thank you very much.
All right, and we're moving on to resolution 23 LCRA 10762 regarding Development Resource Partners LLC. Rob, I think you're going to walk us through that one.
Yeah, good afternoon, commissioners. Presenting resolution 23 LCRA 10763 which authorizes a contract with Development Resource Partners for acquisition services related to the 20th Street Mobility Improvements Project. This project is one of 9 infrastructure projects that SLDC has taken the lead on to support the NGA and the Project Connect neighborhoods. All total, the 9 projects will result in about $145 million of investment in streets, sidewalks, and bicycle paths. This particular project is about a $10.9 million cost. It's funded by a U.S. Department of Transportation RAISE grant that was secured a few years ago that also helped fund a portion of the Jefferson Corridor improvements. It's also funded by a CMAQ grant, which is administered through the East-West Gateway program. And Great Rivers Greenway is funding a portion of this project as it does connect with the Brick Line on Market Street and will in the future connect as well at St. Louis Avenue. And then also the NGA bond proceeds that have been 3 series of bonds have been issued by collectively the state and the city. And this project will help be supported by those bond proceeds. It's basically 1.6 miles. It's from Market Street on the south to St. Louis Avenue on the north. It includes a separated bike path, which has been relocated from Jefferson Avenue. You may know that Jefferson Avenue is currently being rebuilt as of today even. It includes new pavement, sidewalks, lighting, traffic signals, new street trees. In order to complete this project, we need approximately 78 temporary and permanent construction easements. I believe there's only 1 permanent easement that's required. So I think the other 77 are all temporary construction easements. Development Resource Partners has been amazing to work with on other recent infrastructure projects, including the Jefferson Corridor project and the city streets projects that are underway around the MLS Stadium and the I-64 at Jefferson Interchange project, which is pretty much complete except for the city streets portions that connect to that interchange. DRP has estimated that the acquisition costs, their fees will total about $66,300 based on the number of easements that are required. We're seeking authorization to put a cap of $70,000 so we don't have to come back if there's just a minor adjustment on one or two, maybe potentially additional easements that are required. And with that, I would entertain any questions.
So Rob, are they just negotiating and recording easements, or is there more to it than that?
They basically handle all aspects of the acquisition of the easement. So they contact the property owners, they seek a donation of the easements. The property owners are otherwise entitled to some payment according to federal formulas. They handle the appraisal process. They create the titles and they work with the title companies. So they basically manage all aspects of acquiring these easements short of cutting the check to the property owner.
Any other questions for Mr. Orr on this resolution?
Rob, can you go back over what, there's 78 parcels and you said there's gonna be some construction easements and then some permanent easements. And that's due to the width of the street, I'm assuming. But I gotta assume that there's multiple property owner or multiple parcels that are owned by the same property owner. Has a mapping exercise been completed on this? And do we have a good idea on the scope of what, how many people they're gonna have to contact?
It has been. I don't have that in front of me, but you know, there's a lot of driveways that are crossed here.
Okay.
You know, there are, anytime you build something within the right of way, as you may know, you sometimes have to encroach on the adjoining parcels to get all the way up to the edge of the right of way, and sometimes you go a little bit over it. Particularly with like concrete forms when you're doing sidewalks and things like that. So again, it's almost unusual never to have a right-of-way acquisition requirement. So we're kind of lucky in that respect that we don't actually need to acquire right-of-way.
Right.
And I believe the only permanent easement that may be required, and I don't remember the name of the park, but it's along a park that the city owns. So I'm not exactly sure how we go about doing that, because as you may know, taking of a park requires a vote of the public, but that one may be a little bit trickier. We may have to work out a long-term lease or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, these are, you know, this is relatively straightforward, relatively easy actually, for considering most of our construction projects that we don't have to acquire permanent right of way.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. It sounds like it's not going to be a major heavy lift, but you have to have the right company that can make it work. I guess the only other question I'd have is, you know, this is not considered a brick line project, and we've got the Tower Grove connector here in the south. Maybe you could give us a little background on, you know, why this isn't connected to the brick line project? Is it because of the way that it's funded? I know, you know, the proximity to the stadium and then going north is advantageous, but we're also I guess they're doing that on South Grand as well. So it's kind of a parallel track a few blocks over.
I'm not sure exactly how Great Rivers Greenway is characterizing it, but I think they're considering it to be an extension of the brick line.
Okay.
So it does connect to the brick line, as you know, that has been built along Market Street all the way up to 20th Street. So we're the southern point of this project is Market Street. So we're tied into the brick line. That bicycle pathway will go north from Market all the way up to St. Louis Avenue. St. Louis Avenue is expected to become another extension of the brick line from Grand going east. And I think the goal there is ultimately maybe even to connect the brick line to the North Riverfront Trail.
Okay.
So it's really all about connectivity here. And so, you know, touching the brick line in two different locations, I think, you know, makes this one a particularly good project. And in addition, as you know, Jefferson Corridor is currently being rebuilt. It's two separate projects. Well, it may even be three separate projects now that I think about it. But anyway, from Scott Avenue on the south, actually Shoto on the south, all the way north to Natural Bridge. And that construction is already underway. If you've driven down Jefferson Avenue recently, there's going to be a little bit of a lane diet but Jefferson Avenue, is pretty much like an airport runway width. So, and with bicycles interacting with a heavy vehicular use is really not a safe experience for bicyclists. So this project actually tied to earlier projects, which are under construction already, and with the interchange actually being almost fully built, except for the city streets that connect to it. The bike path coming up Jefferson Avenue veers to the east along Scott Avenue, which many of you may know is where the UPS facility is located. So it goes east along Scott Avenue, then it goes under the highway and the railway, and it comes out on 20th Street, and then we'll continue north. So getting the bicycles off of Jefferson Avenue for a safer north-south experience is certainly an advantage. And to that point, Great Rivers Greenway, I think, is providing $500,000 for this project because of that connectivity to its project. So, and again, on the east side of the soccer stadium, that portion is fairly well complete already, because we wanted, we committed to them to having it as ready as possible by the time they have their opening home games on Saturday. Amazing improvements that have happened over the last even 6 weeks. I wasn't sure we were going to get there, but it's looking pretty good today. I don't know if the traffic signals are working. I haven't driven down there in a few days, but those of you that use Market Street coming downtown may have a few more traffic signals to deal with on your commute.
Yeah, Rob, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something that we all need to celebrate. There was a lot of work done with this commission and through SLDC, especially with you and Neil, and Otis before Neil. So what a great celebration that project is complete, and we're opening it up this weekend. It's fantastic.
I mean, when I think about it, the city and the state committed to the NGA that we would not only improve the access to their new campus, but that we would improve the neighborhoods around it. And many of these infrastructure projects, they're not just to the benefit of the NGA workers getting to and from work faster. These are really neighborhood level scale projects. Jefferson Avenue, obviously a main north-south connector, connecting a lot of people to jobs and so on. But this one's in neighborhoods. Cass Avenue is a future project, is crosses neighborhoods. St. Louis Avenue is a future project. So we're really, it's not just about, while the NGA was the impetus maybe especially for getting some of the funding for these projects, we're really all about improving the neighborhoods around the NGA, the Project Connect area. And, $145 million over about a 7-8 year span of infrastructure is just an incredible amount of money to be able to fund.
And to coordinate it. And this resolution is a good example of that. And it's wonderful to be a small part of it, and to see all this happening, because it is about economic development, and development's going to follow these infrastructure improvements.
We certainly hope so.
Very good. Any other questions for Rob on this resolution? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve resolution. Well, and we're capping the funding at 70. And when do we expect that all to be completed?
Well, unfortunately, due to COVID and other complications, this project is slightly behind schedule, but we have gotten extensions through East-West Gateway. So we're on a kind of an accelerated temporary construction easement acquisition schedule. I'm trying to figure out how to say that. Within the next 3 to 4 months, we're hopeful. And again, because these are only temporary construction easements, we don't anticipate the kinds of challenges that we had when we were negotiating with some of the property owners on at least 2 of the previous projects that were significantly complicated in terms of securing that right of way that was necessary. These are just temporary constructions, minor disturbances to the property owners, the federally required process that we have to follow. And Development Resource Partners has extensive background in that. In fact, they were actually the acquisition agent for the NGA parcels as well within the 99-acre footprint. following federal guidelines for expenditures of federal dollars to acquire privately owned properties.
Very good. All right, then. I'm giving myself a little bit of a pause here.
Kennard just ran out.
I'm just sorry I don't get to present a financial analysis and community benefits scorecard here. But we can maybe think about that one for the future. How do we quantify the, which projects we supported SLDC in terms of public infrastructure?
Right.
There we go. We'll get the right formatting.
Waiting for Kennard, I was pleasantly surprised to hear how many of those connector and brickland projects are already funded and designed and ready to start. And I'm sure there'll be a lot more media around it when it happens. But it's not just talk anymore. It's really good things are following with actual construction.
So actually, I guess there may be a third connection here now that I think about it, because Cass Avenue also bisects this segment of 20th Street. So Cass Avenue, we just, within the last few weeks even issued the notice to proceed on design. It was at one time going to be treated as two separate projects. For a lot of reasons, we decided to combine them into one. So Cass Avenue is currently in design that will be improved from Tucker Avenue on the east all the way to Grand Avenue on the west. And where Cass Avenue will include some sort of a bicycle facility, Cass Avenue at Grand is actually also where the brick line that comes from the north down North Grand from Fairground Park actually jogs to the west one block at Cass Avenue over to Spring and then comes down south, just due to the number of businesses and the traffic and so on along Grand. So there's actually a third potential connection here with the brick line.
Outstanding.
Thank you.
All right. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve resolution 23 LCRA 10762.
So move, request for previous roll.
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded with request for previous roll. Is there any objection to that request? Hearing none, the motion passes and the resolution is approved.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Rob. All right. Our next, anything on open agenda?
I'd just like to thank you guys for bearing with us as we roll this out, the scorecards. These are all projects you've seen before, so we added the community scorecard just to test it out this month. Next month, we have new projects coming just in front of you, so we'll have a complete package for you. This package will be the same package we'll present the Board of Aldermen. So
Okay.
as we move forward, please reach out to us if you have any suggestions with the scorecards, and we're all open to hear. Thank you.
Very good. Anything from the commissioners? Our next meeting is March 28, 2023. At this time, I'd entertain the motion to adjourn.
So move.
So moved. So many second.
It's been probably moved and seconded. We are adjourned. Thank you all.